Chapter 8: Knowledge and Refinement. Training and Manners of the Aimma. Like the companions of the first generation and their immediate successors, that is, the Tabi'un, the leading scholars of the second and third centuries had many differences on issues which required ijtihad. Since their differences were not motivated by any form of egoism or desire to create discord, one can venture to say that they were all on the right path. It is perhaps no exaggeration to say also that these scholars were singularly dedicated to the pursuit of truth and to attaining the pleasure of God. They were highly trained and qualified, and this is why their verdicts were accommodated by scholars of all ages. It was common practice among them to endorse the judgments of those who passed sound verdicts, irrespective of the schools of law they belonged to, and to ask God's forgiveness for those who seemed to have erred. They had a high mutual regard for one another. When faced with a difficult issue, some jurists would consult the literature of another school without any hesitation or embarrassment, even though they might not agree on the type of evidence used. They of course felt free to consult any substantiated text. Having arrived at their verdicts, they would issue them with such concluding phrases as, "This is more cautious, this is preferable, this is how it should be, I dislike this," or "This does not appeal to me." They did not feel impeded by any unwarranted restrictions or any fear of unfounded accusations. They were easygoing and open-minded, and their concern was to facilitate matters for people. Among the companions of the Prophet, their successors, and the leading scholars after them, there were several differences relating, for example, to the preparation for and the performance of Salah. Some recited the Bismillah at the beginning of Suratul Fatiha, and others did not. Some uttered it aloud and others did not. Some recited the Qunut supplication as part of the Salatul Fajr, that is, dawn prayer, while others did not. Some renewed their wudu, that is, ablution, after nose bleeding, vomiting, and cupping, while others did not. Some considered that any physical contact with women nullified wudu, while others did not. Some renewed their wudu after eating camel meat or food cooked on a direct fire, while others saw no need for that. These differences never prevented them from performing Salah behind each other. Abu Hanifa and his followers, as well as Al-Shafi'i and other leading scholars, performed Salah behind the Aimma of Medina from the Maliki school and others as well, although these Aimma did not recite the Bismillah, whether silently or audibly. It was reported that Abu Yusuf, a leading scholar of the Hanafi school, performed Salah behind Al-Rashid. Abu Yusuf found later that Al-Rashid had been cupped. He did not repeat the Salah, although he was of the opinion that cupping nullifies ablution. Ahmad ibn Hanbal believed that nose bleeding and cupping nullified ablution. He was asked if people could perform Salah behind an Imam who did not renew his ablution after bleeding. He replied, "How could I not pray behind Malik and Sayyid ibn al-Musayyab?" According to Al-Shafi'i, the Qunut supplication is a firm practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yet he is reported to have performed Salatul Fajr near the grave of Abu Hanifa, but did not make the Qunut supplication. When asked about this, Al-Shafi'i replied, "How can I deviate from him while I am in his presence?" He is also reported to have said, "Perhaps we have inclined to the school of thought of the people of Iraq." Malik was the most knowledgeable scholar of hadith transmitted by the people of Medina and the most accurate in dealing with chains of transmitters, that is, isnad. He was also the one most acquainted with the practices of Umar ibn al-Khattab and the sayings of Abdullah ibn Umar, Aisha, and the 7 prominent jurists among the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was one of the pioneers in establishing the science of hadith reporting and making juristic verdicts. The hadith which he collected and the verdicts he made are contained in his book Al-Muwatta, in which he compiled the reliable ahadith known to the people of the Hijaz, the sayings of the companions and the verdicts of the second generation of Muslims which he verified. The chapters of the book are classified in accordance with the branches of jurisprudence with considerable scholarship. Al-Muwatta is the fruit of 40 years of scholarly effort. It was the first book on hadith and jurisprudence which appeared in the history of Islam. Its contents were validated by 70 contemporary scholars from the Hijaz. Nonetheless, when the Khalifa al-Mansur wanted to have several copies made and distributed to the new Muslim regions with the intention of getting people to follow its line and thus put an end to differences and dissension, Malik was the first to reject this suggestion. He is reported to have said to al-Mansur, "Don't do this. People in various parts of the Muslim lands already possess a body of knowledge based on reports they have received and sayings of the Prophet they have heard prior to this. Each group of people acts according to what came to it first, and so there are variations in people's practices. Leave the people of each region to follow what they themselves choose." The Khalifa acquiesced in Malik's wish and prayed that God should grant him success. Malik's advice to the Khalifa and his refusal to have Al-Muwatta, a book he had worked on so scrupulously and for so long, officially prescribed as the standard text of hadith and jurisprudence, leave us in no doubt about his breadth of understanding and open-mindedness as well as his complete lack of egoism. He was able to see the limits and dangers of authoritarian rule. Allah's letter to Malik. Perhaps one of the best practical examples of the ethics and norms of disagreement was the letter sent to Malik by Al-Layth ibn Sa'd, the leading scholar and jurist in Egypt at the time. The letter, in which Al-Layth gave his views on the various issues on which he differed with Malik, was a hallmark of knowledge and gracefulness. The letter is too long to quote in full, but here are a few excerpts to illustrate its content and tone. "From your letter which I have received, I am pleased to know that you are in good health. May God make your health last and enable you to show gratitude to Him. May He shower more of His abundant goodness on you. You have been informed that I make juristic rulings for people which are at variance with the practice of the people of Medina. You pointed out that I should fear for my own soul about the verdicts I make for the people here, and also that they should follow the practice of the people of Medina, to which the Prophet migrated and in which the Quran was revealed. What you have written in this respect, God willing, is right, and I trust that my response to your comments will please you. Among those who are blessed with knowledge, there is no one who dislikes odd or contrary verdicts more than I, or who has a greater preference for the past scholars of Medina, or who adopts more readily the verdicts on which they are unanimous. Praise and gratitude are due to God, the Lord and Sustainer of the worlds. No associate has He." Al-Layth ibn Sa'd goes on to state the differences of opinion between him and Malik over the authority of the practice of the people of Medina. He points out that many of the early companions of the Prophet who were brought up under his guidance and instruction had disseminated the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah through various lands as far as they could. He also pointed out that the followers of the second generation had their differences of opinion about many issues. By way of example, he mentions Rabia ibn Abi Abdurrahman but states his disagreement with him on certain matters. Then he says, "In spite of this, praise be to God, Rabia was a person who possessed abundant goodness. He had an original mind and an eloquent tongue. He was a man of obvious grace and good manners, and had a genuine love for his fellow Muslims in general and for us in particular. May God grant him his mercy and forgiveness and the best recompense for his deeds. Next, Ibn Sa'ad mentions some of the issues over which he and Malik were at variance. For example, combining Salatul Maghrib and Salatul Isha on a rainy night, passing judgment on the evidence of a single witness, paying the delayed portion of a dowry only in the event of a divorce, performing the prayer for rain, Salatul Istisqa, before delivering the khutbah, that is the sermon. Ibn Sa'ad concludes his letter by saying, I have omitted many issues apart from these. I pray that God grants you success and long life because of what I hope people will benefit thereby and because of what I fear they will lose with the passing away of one such as you. Let me assure you of my feeling of nearness to you in spite of the distance that separates us. This is the position of esteem in which I hold you. Do not stop writing to me with news of yourself, your children and family, or if there is anything you want me to do for you personally or for anyone for whom you have a special concern. I would be most pleased to do any service in this regard. At the time of writing this letter, we are in good health, praise be to God. We ask God to enable us to thank Him for what He has favored us with and to continue to bestow His favors on us. May the peace and mercy of God be on you. There are many discussions and debates recorded in biographical works and historical writings which display great erudition and precision and which are filled with glowing examples of the proper ethics and norms of disagreement. This spirit of enlightened discourse suffered only with the emergence and spread of rigid imitation, that is, taqleed. This meant that people followed the rulings and practices of a particular school of thought to the exclusion of all others and even regarded others as deficient or misguided. The result was a hardening of attitudes and positions among scholars and a certain rigidity towards knowledge itself. This was especially true after the passing away of reputable scholars of whom Al-Ghazali has said. Some of the remaining scholars of the second generation continued to uphold the exemplary pattern set up by their predecessors. They adhered steadfastly to the purity of Islam and the established practice of the early righteous scholars. They shunned close contact with those in political authority and refused to be compromised. The Khulafa, out of necessity, insisted on appointing them as judges and governors. But when they failed to enlist their approval, they were worldly, self-seeking opportunists ready to take the place of the pious and the righteous. In this respect, Al-Ghazali says, people of this ilk saw the dignified and honored status of the scholars and the fact that despite their reluctance and refusal, they were offered positions as Aimma and governors. These self-seeking people proceeded to acquire knowledge to fulfill their desire for scholarly repute and positions of honor. They engaged in the study of jurisprudence. They presented themselves to governors and sought their friendship and patronage. Some of them were successful, but none could claim to be free from the degradation and humiliation of pleading for material favors and official ranks. Jurists who were once sought by persons in authority thus became the seekers of patronage and status. They had maintained their integrity and honor through their refusal to bow to persons in authority. Now they were compromised and humiliated by ingratiating themselves with rulers. This is apart from those scholars of God's religion whom the Almighty has blessed with success in every age. Al-Ghazali has thus depicted the actual situation of scholars who had become infatuated with the quest for the material world and for whom religion was the only way to reach the gates of princely patronage. In this desire to attain the love of rulers, knowledge was devalued. Malik used to say, "Do not acquire this knowledge of religion from four types of people: the foolish and the incompetent, the self-seeking opportunists who seek to propagate their own innovations, the liars who falsify people's reports even if they do not do so using the sayings of the Prophet, and those who are known for their goodness, righteousness, and regular performance of worship, but who are ignorant of the basis of what they practice and speak about. He also said, "This knowledge is religion itself. Be careful from whom you acquire your knowledge." I know of 70 people who, while pointing to the Prophet's mosque, would say, "The Messenger of God, may God bless him and grant him peace, said," while at these very columns. But I have never believed anything they said. They were people who would prove to be honest if they were to be entrusted with the public treasury, but when it comes to academic honesty, they would fail to live up to that expectation. Thus, we avoided consulting these people until Ibn Shihab came to us and we started to crowd at his door seeking reliable knowledge. It was unlikely that great disagreements would have occurred amongst people who had these merits and characteristics as those of Ibn Shihab. Even if difference did occur, they only resulted from the individual's pursuit of the truth for the truth's sake and not from any egoistical ends. In order to appreciate the standard of ethics and the norms of behavior which the early righteous scholars practiced in dealing with differences, let us look at a few examples of exemplary conduct which they set. Abu Hanifa and Malik. We have already alluded to the major difference between the leading scholars Abu Hanifa and Malik and their basic variations in approach when tackling new issues. There was also a marked difference in age between the two men, but all this did not tarnish their mutual respect and fellowship. The famous Qazi Iyad in his book Al-Madarik recorded that Al-Layth ibn Sa'ad met Malik in Medina as he was coming out of a meeting with Abu Hanifa. "I see that your forehead is bathed in perspiration," said Al-Layth. "I sweated in my meeting with Abu Hanifa. He is really a jurist, faqih, O Egyptian," said Malik. Later, Al-Layth met Abu Hanifa and said to him, "How excellent are the remarks of this man, that is Malik, concerning you. I have not met anyone more quick-witted and truly perceptive than he," acknowledged Abu Hanifa in return. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan and Malik. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan was a very close and prominent colleague of Abu Hanifa and was the one who kept record of his judgments. He left his home and went to live for 3 years with Imam Malik, during which he studied Al-Muwatta directly from him. One day, the two distinguished scholars Muhammad ibn al-Hasan and Al-Shafi'i were conferring. Muhammad ibn al-Hasan ventured to say, "Our colleague," meaning Abu Hanifa, "is more knowledgeable than yours," meaning Malik. Moreover, he added, as if to provoke Al-Shafi'i, "It is not befitting that Abu Hanifa should remain silent while Malik speaks." Imam Al-Shafi'i replied, "Tell me in all honesty, who is more knowledgeable about the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be on him, Malik or Abu Hanifa?" "Malik," replied Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, and went on to add, "But our colleague Abu Hanifa is more informed and skilled in analogy." Al-Shafi'i conceded that this was so and went on, "Malik is more knowledgeable in the book of God than Abu Hanifa. So, whoever is more knowledgeable in the book of God and in the Sunnah of his messenger has priority to speak." Muhammad ibn al-Hasan could not say anything more. Al-Shafi'i and Muhammad ibn al-Hasan. Al-Shafi'i said, "One day I was having a discussion with Muhammad ibn al-Hasan. There was so much talk and disagreement between us that I noticed Ibn al-Hasan's jugular vein swelling up due to rage and fury. Nonetheless, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan said, if there is any person who disagrees with us and yet is able to convince us of his position, it is Al-Shafi'i. When he was asked why this was so, he replied, because of his clarity of mind and exposition and his certainty in knowledge, which shows itself quite clearly in the process of questioning, answering, and listening. These are some examples of the ethics and norms of proper behavior in disagreement as demonstrated by the leading scholars. From these examples, we can see that the successors of the second generation followed the exemplary patterns set by their righteous forebears. They all drank deeply from the source of prophetic guidance and example. The good conduct of our righteous forebears was not only confined to avoiding defamation and slander, for their overriding concern was for precision and certitude in all their intellectual pursuits. They therefore also steered away from matters about which they had no knowledge and were extremely careful in making juristic rulings lest they should err. Such features of their conduct are evident in a statement made by Abdurrahman ibn Abi Layla, who said, "In this mosque, the Prophet's mosque in Medina, I knew 120 of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is not any one among them who, if asked about a saying of the Prophet or to give a ruling on an issue, would not wish that some other companion would reply instead." In another version, he is reported to have said, "People would present an issue to one of the companions. This companion would refrain from passing judgment and would refer the questioner to another companion. The process would go on until the issue would be referred back to the companion who had been consulted first." Muslim scholars in these early times had raised themselves above emotional impulses when issues of knowledge were concerned and were willing to admit any deficiency on their part and defer to others. They would be very circumspect when faced with a critical issue, lest they give an erroneous and potentially harmful judgment. A case in point is that of a man who was sent by his people to ask Malik about a particular issue. It took the man 6 months to reach Malik. When the issue was put to Malik, he said to the man, "Tell those who sent you that I have no knowledge about this matter." "Who then knows about it?" asked the man. "The one whom Allah has endowed with knowledge," said Malik, and quoted the verse of the Quran in which the angels, when asked by God to tell Adam about the nature of all things, said, "Glory be to you, of knowledge we have none except what you have taught us." It is related that on another occasion, Malik was asked about 48 issues. To 32 of these, his reply was, "I do not know." Also, Khalid ibn Khaddash reported, "I came to Malik from Iraq to ask his opinion on 40 issues, and he only answered 5 of these." Ibn Ajlan used to say, if a learned man failed to understand the wisdom of the saying, "I do not know," his judgment would be erroneous. Malik himself used to quote the saying, "A learned man should instill into his students the habit of saying, 'I do not know,' so that this habit should become a principle to which they should resort. In this vein, if someone is asked about something he does not know, he should say, 'I do not know.'" And Abu al-Darda, the companion of the Prophet, is reliably reported as having said, "To say, 'I do not know' is half of knowledge." Malik and Ibn Uyayna. Sufyan ibn Uyayna was a close associate of Imam Malik. Al-Shafi'i said that were it not for both of them, knowledge in the Hijaz would have disappeared. Ibn Uyayna, however, was inclined to defer to Malik. It is related that once he mentioned a hadith and was afterwards told that Malik differed with him on the hadith. "Do you compare me with Malik?" retorted Ibn Uyayna. "My status compared to Malik's is, as the poet Jarir says, like the strength of a suckling camel when compared to that of a grown-up one." Ibn Uyayna related a hadith of the Prophet, peace be on him. People might travel to the farthest corners of the earth in search of knowledge, but they will not find anyone more knowledgeable than the learned man of Medina. When asked who was alluded to in this hadith, Ibn Sufyan said it was Malik ibn Anas and added, he, that is Malik, never reported any unreliable hadith. He never accepted any hadith from anyone whose trustworthiness and reliability were not beyond question. I have a feeling that Medina will come to ruin after the death of Malik ibn Anas. Malik and Al-Shafi'i. Al-Shafi'i said, Malik ibn Anas is my teacher. I derive knowledge from him. When people mention scholars, Malik stands out as a star. There is no one that I trust more wholeheartedly than Malik ibn Anas. He also used to say, if a hadith is reported by Malik, its reliability should be readily accepted because if he had any doubt about any hadith, he would disregard it completely. Ahmad ibn Hanbal and Malik. Abu Zara al-Damashqi said, I heard someone asking Ahmad ibn Hanbal about his stand when faced with a hadith over whose transmission Sufyan and Malik disagreed. Ibn Hanbal replied, Malik is dearer to me. He was then asked, what if Al-Awza'i and Malik were in disagreement? Ibn Hanbal replied, Malik is preferable in my opinion, although I regard Al-Awza'i as one of the leading scholars. Ibn Hanbal was then asked about Ibrahim al-Nakhai without comparing him with Malik, since al-Nakhai was not one of the experts on hadith. Ibn Hanbal replied, Al-Nakhai has to be placed among his contemporaries. Then he was asked for his advice about a man who wanted to learn by heart a hadith transmitted by a single individual. He replied, let him learn the hadith reported by Malik. Opinions on Abu Hanifa. Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj was a leading authority on hadith, while Abu Hanifa, as we have already seen, belonged to the school of reasoning Ahl al-Rai. Despite the differences in their methodologies, Shu'bah had a high regard for Abu Hanifa. There was a bond of genuine affection between them and they corresponded with each other. Shu'bah used to authenticate Abu Hanifa's works and request him to speak. When the news of Abu Hanifa's death reached him, he said, gone with him is the jurisprudence of Kufa. May God bestow His mercy on him and on us. When someone asked Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan about Abu Hanifa, he said, conscious of God, he only recommends and extols that knowledge with which God Almighty has endowed him. As for myself, by God, whenever I deem any of his pronouncements to be preferable, I adopt them. This shows that divergence in views did not prevent these scholars from accepting what they perceived to be good from one another. In addition, each would mention the virtues and merits of the other and acknowledge their ideas when they quoted them in support of their own arguments. There are many accounts which tell of the high esteem in which Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak held Abu Hanifa. He always spoke of him in a favorable manner and attested to his integrity. He often quoted him and praised him. He would not allow anyone to disparage him in his own mosque. One day, someone in his circle of students tried to sneer at Abu Hanifa. Ibn al-Mubarak said to him, "Be quiet. By God, if you had met Abu Hanifa, you would have seen the strength of his intellect and his nobility." Al-Shafi'i is reported to have said that he heard Malik being asked about Uthman al-Bati. Malik replied, he was a man of average ability. Then he was asked about Ibn Abi Shubrama, and he again said he was a man of average ability. Then he was asked about Abu Hanifa, and he replied, "If he came to the brick walls of this mosque and argued with you, saying that they were made of wood, you would really believe that they were wood." This was a pointer to Abu Hanifa's skill in analogical deduction. Al-Shafi'i's most frequently quoted comment on Abu Hanifa was, "Regarding jurisprudence, people are like dependent children before Abu Hanifa." In the study sessions and seminars conducted by these scholars, only the good and the beneficial were mentioned. If anyone tried to disregard or contravene the conventions of proper ethics and behavior in which they were conducted, that person would be immediately corrected. He would not be given any chance to slander or sneer at anyone. Al-Fadl ibn Musa al-Sanani was asked to comment on those who scornfully attacked Abu Hanifa. He said, Abu Hanifa confronted such people with knowledge they could grasp and also with knowledge that they were intellectually not able to grasp. He left them nothing that they could stand on, and they resented him for this. These are some of the reports and comments which have been made by leading scholars of hadith who used to differ with most of Abu Hanifa's interpretations and conclusions. Their differences with him did not prevent them from extolling his virtues and merits, for they were confident that these differences were not motivated by any egoism or arrogance on his part, but by the mutual pursuit of truth. Were it not for these high ethical standards and refined manners, a great deal of the jurisprudence of our early and respected scholars would have fallen into oblivion or been cast aside. These scholars came to the defense of other scholars only because they knew that their responsibility was to safeguard Islamic jurisprudence, which is indispensable for the moral protection and well-being of the Muslim Ummah. Opinions on Al-Shafi'i. Ibn Uyayna was a distinguished scholar and one who was held in high esteem. Yet, when people came to him for an explanation of some point in the Quran or for a judicial ruling, he would refer them to Al-Shafi'i with the words, "Ask this person." Often, on seeing Al-Shafi'i, he would say, "This is the best young man of his time." And when he heard of the death of Al-Shafi'i, he said, "If Muhammad ibn Idris has died, then the best man of his time has died." Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan used to say, "I pray to God for Al-Shafi'i even in my salah." Abdullah ibn Abdul Hakam and his son Muhammad were followers of the Maliki school of thought. But the father advised the son to remain close to Al-Shafi'i because he had not seen anyone who had more insight into the principles of knowledge or jurisprudence. It seems that Muhammad acted on his father's advice because he is reported to have said, "Had it not been for Al-Shafi'i, I would not have known how to reply to anyone's argument. Through him, I have learnt whatever I have. He is the one, may God bless him, who instructed me in analogical reasoning, and he was an upholder of the Sunnah and established practice. He was a good and virtuous person. He had an eloquent tongue and a firm, exacting intellect." Ahmad and Al-Shafi'i. Abdullah, the son of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, once asked his father, "What sort of person was Al-Shafi'i? I hear you frequently praying for him." Al-Shafi'i, may God bless him, said his father, was like the sun to the world and like good health to people. Can you think of any substitute or compensation for these two vital necessities? Saleh, another son of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, was met by Yahya ibn Mu'in, who asked him, "Isn't your father ashamed of what he is doing?" "What is he doing?" asked Saleh. "I saw him with Al-Shafi'i," said Yahya. Al-Shafi'i was riding and he was on foot holding the rein of Al-Shafi'i's mount. Saleh later related this to his father, who said, "If you see him again, tell him that I say that if he wishes to gain true knowledge and understanding, let him come and take hold of the other side of the reins of Al-Shafi'i's mount." Abu Humayd ibn Ahmad al-Basri reported that he was one day discussing a certain issue with Ahmad ibn Hanbal. A man from the audience told Ibn Hanbal that there was no authentic hadith on that issue. If there is no authentic hadith on this issue, there is Al-Shafi'i's pronouncement on it, and the proofs he has used are the most reliable on this issue, replied Ibn Hanbal, thus demonstrating his confidence in Al-Shafi'i's scholarship. He later asked Al-Shafi'i for his ruling on a certain matter which the latter gave. Ahmad then asked him, On what basis have you pronounced this ruling? Is there a hadith or written document on it? Al-Shafi'i replied that there was, and he produced a relevant authentic hadith of the Prophet, peace be on him. Ahmad ibn Hanbal is also reported to have said, "If I were asked a question on which I do not know a relevant saying, that is khabar, I would say, Al-Shafi'i says, because he is an imam and a scholar from the Quraysh." Dawood ibn Ali al-Asbahani reported that he heard Ishaq ibn Rahawayh say, "Ahmad ibn Hanbal met me in Makkah and said to me, 'Come with me and let me introduce you to a man the like of whom you have never seen.' And he showed me Al-Shafi'i." Such was the high esteem in which Ahmad ibn Hanbal held Al-Shafi'i. It is not strange for a student to be fond of and grateful to his teacher. But Al-Shafi'i himself in return acknowledged his student's excellence and his knowledge of the Sunnah by saying to him, "You are more knowledgeable in Hadith and in the biography of Hadith narrators than I. If you hear of any authentic Hadith, let me know whether it is related in Kufa, Basra or Syria. I will refer to it if it proves to be authentic." Al-Shafi'i had such a high regard for Ibn Hanbal that he would not mention his name but would refer to him as the reliable and trustworthy one among his colleagues. These are just glimpses which clearly show the high standards of ethics and behavior practiced by the eminent scholars of early times. These high standards were not affected by differences in approach and methodologies. These righteous forebears of ours were brought up into and guided by the teachings and exemplary patterns set by the noble Prophet, peace be on him. Selfish motives and impulses did not get the better of them in their rigorous pursuit of knowledge. Biographies and history books are replete with instances of scholarly interaction conducted in an intellectually exacting but highly refined and gracious manner according to the best traditions of Islam. This is an object lesson for us today, fragmented and disparate as we are. We need to return to this level of consciousness and refined and gracious behavior which our noble ancestors have demonstrated. This must be done if we are indeed serious in striving to reconstruct a truly Islamic pattern of life. Admittedly, there were instances in which these lofty Islamic standards were not observed. But the responsibility for this failure lies with unthinking followers or recalcitrant individuals who became steeped in bigotry and fanaticism. These individuals or groups failed to perceive the true scientific spirit in scholarly interaction which accounted for the differences among jurists. Nor did they have any insight into the sublime norms of proper adab which emanate from pure intentions, a genuine search for truth, and a desire to ascertain the purpose of the lawgiver. They were, it seems, the type of people about whom Al-Ghazali said, "The jurists have become seekers of favor and status after they were once sought for their knowledge and integrity. They were highly respected when they shunned the blandishments of those in political authority, but they have now become disgraced by succumbing to them. The one who is sought for his knowledge and integrity is the one who is free and is a master of himself. He does not deviate from the truth. The one who is a seeker of favor and status sells himself and is only concerned with pleasing his master." Unthinking followers and self-seeking individuals set differences of opinion into a totally negative mold. Differences of opinion among genuine scholars were, to begin with, a source of blessing which helped develop Islamic jurisprudence, establish the relevance of Islam to changing circumstances, and safeguard public welfare. Later, differences of opinion became one of the most critical and dangerous factors contributing to disunity and internecine strife among Muslims. Indeed, it became a scourge which dissipated much of the energies and potential of the Muslim Ummah. It caused people to become engrossed in matters which did not deserve the attention given to them.